The glasses on your face went through one company. Possibly 5 times. It made the lens. It made the frame. It owns the store where you bought them. It runs the vision insurance that paid part of the bill. And when you finally got tired of the price and bought a cheap pair from a website instead, there's a good chance it owns that website too. The company is Essilor Luxottica. And here's the part that makes this story worth 12 minutes of your time. When you go looking for the number everyone repeats about them, that they control 80% of the eyewear market, it falls apart in your hands. The European Commission, reviewing this exact company, put their share of frames in Europe at less than 20%. The company's own figure is under 10% of the pairs sold worldwide. So here's the question this video answers. If they don't dominate the market, and by the regulators' own numbers, they don't, why does a pair of glasses cost $326 at their store, and $87 somewhere else? Start with what's actually documented, because it's stranger than the myth. In 2018, 2 companies merged. Essilor, French, the lens maker. Luxottica, Italian, the frame maker. The European Commission described them in its own decision as, respectively, the largest supplier of ophthalmic lenses, both worldwide and in Europe, and the largest supplier of eyewear, both worldwide and in Europe. Not the largest by a little. The largest, at both ends of the same object. Now walk through buying a pair of glasses. The lens is likely Essilor, Varilux, Chrysal, Transitions. The frame may be Ray-Ban or Oakley, which they own outright, or it may carry a designer name, Prada, Versace, Burberry, Dolce & Gabbana, which they make under license. The store, they operate roughly 17,750 of them, including Lens Crafters, Sunglass Hut, Pearl Vision, and Target Optical. The insurance that covers part of your bill may be EyeMed, there since 2004, which their own latest annual filing puts at around 85 million people worldwide. That's 4. Here's the 5th, and it's the one that changes how the whole thing reads. Say you've had enough. The store felt like a showroom, the upsells kept coming, and you decide to do what sensible people do, buy online, cheap, no salesperson. One of the best-known budget sites is iBuyDirect. Essilor took a majority stake in it in 2013. The escape hatch is inside the building. And notice what none of that required. It didn't require a monopoly. It didn't require crushing competitors. S.D.N.Y exists. Warby Parker exists. Costco exists, and we'll see in a moment that Costco genuinely beats them on both price and quality. You are free to leave at every step. It's just that several of the doors marked exit lead back to the same company. So where does the price come from? Here I have to be careful, because the internet has a very confident answer that I could not verify, and I'm not going to repeat it. You've probably seen the claim that glasses cost $30 to make and sell for $800. I went looking for the source. There isn't one, no filing, no cost study, no company statement. The closest origin is a line from a newspaper columnist on 60 Minutes in 2012, describing luxury branding in general, not measuring anything about this company. So set it aside. Here's what is on the record. In that same 2012 60 Minutes segment, CBS reported that glasses like these can sell for up to 20 times what they cost to make, and the company, asked directly about markups, declined to discuss specifics. That's the honest version, a reported multiple, and a refusal. Better, because it comes from the company's own filings, their annual report spells out what a designer name costs them. When they license a brand like Prada or Versace, they pay a royalty of 6 to 13% of net sales, plus a marketing commitment of 5 to 12% on exclusive global deals that run 5 to 15 years. Sit with that. Somewhere between 11 and 25% of the price of those designer frames is the cost of the name and the advertising for the name, before anyone has bent a piece of metal. And it's a genuinely great business, the license is exclusive, and it's global, and it's locked for up to 15 years. Then there's the number they publish themselves. Their adjusted gross margin for the 2025 financial year was 60.9%. That is the closest thing to an honest answer to how much of this price isn't the product, and it's their figure, not an estimate. The company has never been shy about this. In 2012, then CEO Andrea Guerra sat across from Leslie Stahl and gave what is still the cleanest defense anyone's offered: everything is worth what people are ready to pay. Stahl asked whether telling customers that their Chanel frames were made by Luxottica would change how they felt. Guerra's answer: "You know, that would be totally wrong, that would be crazy." He's not lying to you. That's a description of how branded goods work, said out loud. And if you want proof that the brand is the product, not the plastic, there's a cleaner example than any markup figure. It's the sunglasses you're picturing right now. In April 1999, Luxottica agreed to buy Bausch & Lomb's sunglasses business for $640 million in cash. That deal brought them Revo, Arnett, Killer Loop, and Ray-Ban. At the time, Ray-Ban was not a luxury brand. It was a drugstore brand. Guerra himself, on camera, described the price point they inherited, about $29, sold off racks at gas stations. 60 years of Hollywood history, the aviators, the wayfarers, sat in a spinner next to the register. So Luxottica did something that sounds insane for a company that had just spent $640 million. They took it off the shelves. For roughly a year. They pulled the product, cut the distribution, redesigned the line, and brought it back positioned upmarket, at $150 and up. The glasses did not become 5 times better. The placement changed. Fortune reported Ray-Ban's revenue went from €252 million the year after the acquisition to over $2 billion by 2014. Ray-Ban is now around an eighth of the entire group's sales. That's the business, stated as plainly as it can be. They didn't find a way to make glasses cheaply and sell them dearly. They bought a name that was being sold too cheaply, and moved it. Everything else, the licenses, the stores, the insurance, exists to protect the conditions under which that move keeps working. Now the famous story, because the way it's usually told is wrong in 4 separate places, and the true version is more instructive. In April 2001, Luxottica completed its takeover of Sunglass Hut, the biggest sunglasses retailer in America. That's the leverage. Oakley, a premium sunglasses brand, depended on those shelves. On August 2, 2001, Oakley stock fell 35%, its biggest single-day decline ever. Luxottica had cut its orders, reportedly to about 1/6 of previous levels. Here's where the popular retelling goes off the rails. It says Oakley was pulled from LensCrafters and Pearle Vision, frozen out for 6 years, and finally surrendered by selling itself in 2007. None of that holds up. There's no contemporaneous evidence of a wider pull. It was an order cut at Sunglass Hut. And Oakley wasn't frozen out for years, it was back on Sunglass Hut shelves by December 2001, about 4 months later. When Luxottica did buy Oakley in 2007, it paid a premium, not a distressed price. So the real lesson isn't a mafia story. It's quieter and worse. A single retailer's purchase order moved a public company's stock by 1/3 in one day. Nobody had to be frozen out. The demonstration was enough. If this were a straightforward abuse story, regulators would have stopped it. They mostly didn't, and the pattern of who acted is the most revealing thing in this whole file. The 2018 merger, worth noting, no purchase price was ever announced. It was an all-share combination that valued the combined company at roughly $49 billion, was cleared by both the European Commission and the US Federal Trade Commission on the same day, March 1, 2018, without conditions. But not everywhere. China's regulator looked at the same deal, in the same year, and reached the opposite conclusion, finding the combined company would have the ability to bundle and foreclose, and imposing remedies. Turkey attached conditions too. And in Europe, enforcement did land, just not from Brussels. France fined the company €125.2 million, and separately €81.1 million. The Commission forced 351 store divestitures in a later retail deal. Meanwhile, in the United States, cleared in 1995, cleared in 2004, cleared in 2018. Then, in July 2023, consumers filed the big antitrust case, alleging exactly the thing this video has been circling, that owning the insurance lets you steer patients to your own stores, to buy your own frames, with your own lenses. In September 2025, the court dismissed it. The judge called the market definition the plaintiffs proposed manifestly implausible. And the ruling contained a line worth quoting exactly, because it's the strongest argument against everything I've just told you: it is not illegal for a business to be enormous, and enormously successful. That steering claim remains an allegation that a court threw out, dismissed with prejudice, and the plaintiffs never appealed. No regulator has ever found it. I'm telling you it was alleged, and I'm telling you it failed. So what do we actually have? Not a monopoly. The numbers refuse to support it, and a federal judge said so. What we have is something the word monopoly is too crude to describe, and that's precisely why it survived every review. Antitrust asks, what share of the market do you hold? This company's answer is genuinely modest. Under 20% of frames in Europe. Under 10% of pairs worldwide. On that question, they're not even close to a violation. But that's the wrong question. Market share measures how much of the shelf is yours. It does not measure how many times one customer pays you on a single trip. Lens, frame, store, insurance, and the discount website they switched to in protest: 5 tolls, 1 walk, no law broken at any booth. And here's the test of whether that matters, from a survey with actual methodology. Consumer Reports, Fall 2022, 11,450 members. Median price paid after insurance, retailer by retailer, LensCrafters, there's $326. S.D.N.Y, not theirs, $87. Costco, also not theirs, $160, and it scored highest in the whole survey for quality, with the fewest defects. Same survey, same year, same corrective function on your face. A 3.7 times spread. That gap isn't extracted by force. Nobody stopped you buying the $87 pair. It's collected from the fact that at the moment of purchase, tired, in a bright store, an optometrist you trust down the hall, an insurance card that seems to make it cheaper, you were never really comparing. The last thing worth saying is that this may be loosening. Bulgari's license expired at the end of 2023 and moved to LVMH's own eyewear company. Tiffany's runs until the end of 2027, and LVMH has publicly floated doing the same, though nothing is decided, so don't count it. And the company's own gross margin fell 260 basis points last year. The frames are walking slowly, which tells you the moat was never the market share. It was the names on the frames, and those are rented. If you want the version of this where a company owned the product instead of renting the brand, watch our film on De Beers, the company that convinced the world a common stone was rare.